thousands of people die from prescription drug overdoses, specifically prescription drugs that are classified as painkillers. So as a result, there are new attempts to regulate the prescription industry to ensure that people are not overprescribed these drugs. Now, how does that happen? Well, there are certain groups that are advocating for doctors to check certain databases before prescribing painkillers. But doctors are fighting back against it because they feel that it would lead to a lot of wasted time, possibly a lot of waste. So let's get into that a little bit. Now, the Obama administration is asking doctors to log into pill tracking databases before prescribing painkillers and other high-risk drugs. A new report from a nonprofit organization known as Shatterproof lays out key recommendations to improve prescription monitoring systems, which are currently used in 49 states. Now, understand that these monitoring systems, again, are in most of our states, but the only issue is there aren't requirements by doctors to use them. So if the majority of doctors in the country aren't required to use them, are they going to use them? No, probably not.
They won't self-regulate?
Exactly. And look, I don't blame them. It's an extra step in your job that you don't necessarily need to do. There's no one telling you you have to do it, so why would you do it?
Yeah.
Now, the reason why we want them to start doing that is because with these databases, you can kind of figure out whether or not there are trends or patterns of abuse with a particular patient. Maybe there's someone who's doctor shopping to ensure that he or she gets, a bunch of prescriptions for the same drug so they can sell it on the black market.
Yeah.
These are big issues that we're coping with in the country right now, and we're looking for solutions. So the systems collect data on prescriptions for high-risk drugs that can be viewed by doctors and government officials to spot suspicious patterns. The aim is to stop doctor shopping, where patients rack up multiple prescriptions from different doctors, either to satisfy their own drug addiction or to sell on the black market. But in most states, doctors are not required to check the databases before writing prescriptions.
Yeah.
So the doctors are worried that, the current systems that we have in place are not good enough. They're not updated in real time, and so as a result, it'll take them a long time to log in. It'll take them a while to get updated information about a patient, which I think are all very, legitimate concerns, and those concerns should be improved. But I think it makes all the sense in the world to make sure that a patient is not, abusing the drugs that are being prescribed to them.
Yeah, I mean, imagine all else being equal, the doctors would obviously like to help people, and you would assume that they would understand the problem far better than anyone, including you or I, would. They actually see it. They know what these drugs do, theoretically, but they also have a ton of pressure put on them by drug manufacturers to sell as much as possible. And so generally, if you make it harder to prescribe anything, they're going to be opposed to that because they have an incentive to sell it.
Yep.
And when you add in personal inconvenience on a daily basis, well, then for a lot of people, I think that some of the general philosophy or empathy is going to go away because your job becomes hard to do and nobody wants that. And I know that I personally, looking at this, look, I shouldn't be in charge of exactly what the reporting characteristics should be, but I assume that the group that set it up knows what they're doing. To say that it should be harder to get these drugs might seem hypocritical coming from me personally, who I say weed should be totally legal. And I haven't fully thought it through, but I think generally almost every drug should be accessible if you want to use it, because I think that people should be able to fuck up their body if they want to. Like I've always said, the example is if I really wanted to harm myself, I could go buy a gallon of bleach and I could drink the entire thing, and that's not illegal right now. But at the same time, the important added on thing to that is information about what you're doing. Nobody takes cocaine and thinks, oh, well, I'm doing this for my knees.
Yeah.
Like nobody takes bath salts and says, well, oh, come on, I've got a bad back. But a lot of people will look at this and say these people want to get addicted or they're drug addicts. But a lot of them become addicted when they don't want to be.
That's exactly right. I think you bring up a really good point. We have this unhealthy perception in the country where illegal narcotics are considered harmful and we should stay away from them, which many of them are, right? But at the same time, we think that prescription drugs, since they're legal and regulated, are safe and they're fair game, and if you're prescribed, you should take the whole prescription and everything's fine. But it's important for everyone to be informed about all of the risks associated with the drugs that they're taking.
Yeah.
I know people personally who got an injury at work, got prescribed OxyContin and got extremely addicted to the point where this person was stealing from his family in order to pay for his addiction. It was serious. And he was an honest, hardworking person, didn't have a criminal record, never took drugs before in his life, had no issues. And he didn't know that he had an addictive personality and he was going to take these painkillers and it was going to take over his entire life. Yeah. And so, yes, you have to be really careful with these drugs. You can't have this perception that, hey, it's just a prescription drug, it's going to be fine. It could cause some real damage to your body.
Yeah, it's amazing how addictive they are and how deadly they are. Like the difference between a normal dose and the dose necessary to kill you with some of these prescription painkillers is not that significant. Whereas for something like weed, which we've been told for half a century is the most dangerous thing in the world, it's almost literally impossible to consume enough to actually kill you.
Yeah.
You would almost need to light yourself on fire with using weed as the kindling to actually die as a result of it. And yet if you ask most people, they would say, oh, those are medicine and weed is a drug. But people who take illegal drugs at least know what they're doing. They know that they're just trying to feel good. If we had all the information about these legal medicines, then I would be much more comfortable with them being as accessible as they are. Like I know in Florida it's incredibly easy. And looking at some of these numbers in terms of the states that have complied with these results, that they say that Kentucky, the deaths went down by 25% in 1 year. And
after
so we
they
know
started checking the databases,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's, at the very least, being super conservative, hundreds of people who did not become addicted unwillingly and then die as a result of their addiction. And that's amazing. And it could be much larger if you expanded it around the country.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
not just people who die, it's people who go broke as a result of it, people who go to jail as a result of it, people's families are ruined as a result of it. Like, if we want to have some kind of war on drugs, which I don't even necessarily think is necessary, this is the sort of front we should be fighting on.
Yes, absolutely. And I should note that prescription painkillers have led to such a serious epidemic that misuse and abuse has increased fourfold since 1999 to more than 29,000 deaths in 2014. 29,000 people died from opioid overdoses in 1 year alone.
Well, how high have the profits risen for some of those companies?
Well,
probably been pretty good.
Of course.
Yeah.